Welcome back to the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Coates. Join me along with industry leaders and friends on a quest to get more people through the gym door and eating and living healthier. Join me where evidence meets empathy while rejecting fitness industry fads and extremism. Let's begin. Luka Hocevar, my brother, back. You are, I haven't gone and counted, but you probably now have, you may even have surpassed Brian Cron, poor Brian, for most lifetime episodes, appearances on my podcast. So it's great to have you, but big changes since you were last on air. You are now a dad. You were expecting last time. So congratulations.
Thank you, my friend. Life is tiring and beautiful.
And for those who have been hiding in a closet, obviously the owner of Vigor Ground Fitness and Performance, and just somebody who's had a massive footprint on the industry as a whole, significant role model of mine. It's great to have you back.
It's great to be back. I don't listen. As many times as you invite me back, I'll be on here. You know, I love chatting with you.
Well, there'll be many more coming, but let's do this one. So obviously, new addition to the family. You're legendary for being productive, juggling a lot, and now a kid. What are the trade-offs you now make to still make sure you're driving your career forward and prioritize family? What are you saying no to?
I say here, so first of all, like you hope, you'd wish that there was this like step-by-step handbook, and even when you talk to other people, you don't, there just isn't. You just have to figure it out. Every kid's different, every family's different. That was definitely, and still is, somewhat of a challenge for me. It's a challenge for me because I am driven and ambitious, and then kind of like the stuff that you're used to being able to do, you have to do it differently, right? Or, it's been very valuable when you say, would you say no to? Right off the bat, like my rule for travel now almost exclusively is like, I'll go if my family can come with me. So speaking things like that, right? Like every single trip that I've taken in 2025, White Tia and my daughter have come with me, which has been cool, right? It's been cool because she's gone to Toronto, flew to Toronto, Vancouver, Napa, Nashville, Slovenia, and before she's 6 months old. And so we've had these memories as a family. Now I said no to 6, events, flyings out, trips, because it's like, they can't come with me. I don't want to spend time away with them. So that's one thing. From the transition here's some, I think, a big lesson, by the way. It's like what happened to me, and we all tell ourselves this story about how we can't do something, and so I went on leave for like 3 weeks, when we had Aria, and, Des, who you know well, when I came back, she was just like, yeah, you don't work anymore on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, meaning coach, right? Not work, but you don't coach anymore. What do you want to say? What do you mean? Yeah, we changed the schedule for you. And then because I love coaching, I was like, well, can I coach every other Saturday? So I coach every other Saturday now. But what happened is, this thing that sometimes it's kind of whether it's your ego, it's your blind spots, that's like, oh no, like I got to do this thing. You don't have to. Constraints can be excellent. You adapt. So now my Tuesdays and Thursdays, the only person I coach is my girl, myself. And then I do, I still work a lot, but it's like I come home earlier, and I'm a dad, at 5. And I'm working from home a bunch more. And what happens is like, you just, I know, like the gun to your head. What are the things that really matter? You kind of narrow them down, right? That massive to-do list that you have, and I'm notorious for this because I'm doing a lot of things, right? It gets squeezed, and then you go, yeah, but what are the 3 to 5 things that if you get done today, it'll be a successful day versus like 12, 14, whatever it may be, right? So it does 2 things. It cuts it down, and the other thing that did for me was the delegation part of it, right? Where you quickly go like, hey man, could you do this? Yeah, I can do that. Okay, great. Where before it would be like, no, I'll just do it. Like I'm good at this. I like this, whatever it may be. Again, you tell yourself some type of story, and then you go for 2 months and you're like, oh, wow, this is actually more effective and efficient. Right. So I'm not like necessarily recommending to like, hey, everybody have a kid, create constraints. I'm like, you can create constraints for yourself without that. But it really is, it's just made me be more clear about what matters, when it matters. So John Berardi taught me about this, right? Like a thing, like a skill that's very, very important. And I'd love to tell you I've mastered it, but I've not. But it's transitions. Transitions from, being a CEO and having a team leadership meeting, and then all of a sudden I'm going to coach for 3 hours, right? I'm transitioning to the coach hat. Then after that I'm going to shoot some content, but then I'm going to come home and it's like, sometimes I just sit in my car for like 3 to 5 minutes to kind of like put the dad hat on, right? Like, so I'm going to transition to that. And again, I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, I'm 10 out of 10 on that. I'm not, I still let my mind wander too much, and I'm practicing transitioning and being really present and playing with Aria and just being there. And then maybe when she goes to sleep, I'm going to put another hat on and study for an hour, right? Like, so the skill set of transitions, I think for everybody is really important. Because you do, it's, I think the gym business in general is like, you wear a lot of hats. I'm a leader, I'm a marketer, I'm a content creator, I'm a coach. I still coach quite a good chunk. It's just, I've compressed it to Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and every other Saturday now. Then you're doing, we just talked about it. And then you're doing brand deals and getting sponsors for this. And so you just become a lot better, I think, at, again, getting clarity on what matters, delegating, and just being efficient. I think that whatever the law is called, that, you take the amount of time that you have to complete a task, right? You have less time, you get that task completed faster. And certain things are for sure that way. We waste a lot of time. I think it's the same way with work. I think it's the same way with training.
Have you found that it's forced you to let go of lower leverage use of your time and embrace higher leverage? And you can give examples if you have any great ones. But in a way, and you mentioned constraints, has this actually made things better, been a bigger driver of success in certain places because you're just being smarter about how you use your time?
Yes, for sure, but not initially, right? And the only way I'd explain that is, you got to look at everything as a skill. And it's like, hey, if you don't play ping pong and I give you a ping pong, racket to hold with your left hand and start playing, you're going to suck, it's going to feel awkward. But if you keep doing it, 3 months later, you're like, oh man, I'm pretty okay with this. Right. So what happens is that at first there's an overwhelm, which I definitely had. And the overwhelm might be like, man, like right now, usually I'd be doing this and this and this, but I can't, and again, if you're ever, of course, if you're a parent, you've been holding a baby, you understand, like, sometimes there's nothing you can do. And the best thing that you can just do is like chill, like let it go. It's like relax. It's thinking time, baby falls asleep in my arms. I can't really do much, and that's fine. But you got to let it go. But at first there was an overwhelm, like, oh my God, I was going to finish this article, but I can't finish the article right now. And then you start going, but if I don't finish that article, like, is it going to really change anything tomorrow? Or, no. Right. Okay, cool. Well, if it's important, where do I block it out? Cool. Now Nanny's coming over. I'm blocking out this time. This is when I'm finishing it. Right. So a lot of it is the chatter in your head and the way you used to do things, because change is hard. I don't care. I don't care who you are. Change is just hard. But the moment that I started realizing, hey, like this doesn't really matter that much, especially not right now. And, when you have a compressed amount of time, what started happening for me was that, like, I'd stop, and like we all do this, by the way, right? Like you work and then you get a ping and you look at the ping and then you scroll a little bit and then you do it again. But, all of a sudden it's like 15 minutes is gone. Then you go back to your work, right? You kind of keep getting distracted a little bit here and there, where now I have a lot less of that. I might sit down and go like, I got 2 hours. These 3 things I need to get done. Email for Vigor, email for B2L, write half the copy for our webinar that's coming up, and get this programming done. And I'm just like, phone off, Freedom app, whatever, boom, I'm done. And then it makes you realize, like, shit, man, what was I doing before? I thought I was really productive, and to the extent I was, but now I'm significantly more productive, right? And again, but it doesn't happen overnight, because again, when you look at the skill portion of it, right, it's like, hey, I practice something else. Now I got to practice it in a different way. And once you do that, then you're like, oh man, I'm way more effective. right? I'm getting the same amount of shit done, but I have XYZ hours less because I'm spending that time focused on the family. So, or, I also realized like, I really don't need to do this. There's a bunch of stuff that I was able to delegate, pay other people. They were happy about it because they made more money, internally, meaning that we're already working for me. And I think everybody has that, it's just like, we do the best with what we have, and then something happens, and hopefully you have the awareness to go like, oh, there's a better way to do it. There's a more effective way to do it. There's a more efficient way to do it.
Did you have a story about you needing to be the guy who did it all?
I think the story that I've been trying to somewhat kind of leave behind maybe is the like, I'm the hardest worker in a room, which, by the way, it has its benefits, right? That I think there's a superpower to that, but you have to be careful to not let it drag you into, doing a bunch of shit that you don't need to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I've had that happen, right? Because you're like, I'm the hardest worker. Everybody's going to see me working the hardest. Like, I'm going to, I can do this too. And it's like, at some point in time, you start, spending a bunch of energy. And I think it's not even time, right? Like, it's energy, right? Like, how much energy you have for things. And if I'm spending a bunch of energy on things that don't really move the needle of the business or my life or my health or anything like that forward, that energy is getting used. And like, I'm getting, if anybody's watching, like a little bit of movement forward. But I could use that energy and essentially, if you give me a big enough lever, I'll move the world, right? Like the saying, I can move a much bigger boulder. I can move something much, further forward with that same amount of energy. And I'm sure that what people could probably relate to is this, right? What are the things that you do that an hour of it like drains you, right? Versus what do you do that like an hour of it, like you're engaged, you're focused, you're in your genius zone, you're doing the stuff you're supposed to be doing, right? When it's over, you're like, man, I want to do more of that. Now, those 2 hours have taken up the same amount of time, but a significantly different amount of energy. One's draining you, like you feel like you need to recover from it, like, God, like get this, stuff away from you. The other one is like, sometimes when I'm creating, whether it's content or stuff for the gym or when I'm coaching, I'm like, I'm on fire, right? It's like, it's lighting me up. And I think that's the other part that like really quickly kind of you recognize in this scenario is like, what is like really draining? By the way, that can be people, that can be environments, that can be tasks, right? And it's like, what do I need to cut off or let go of? Then you get that energy back. And a lot of times, man, you might get the energy back to do a significantly more work in the areas that you're great at and actually move your life and business forward more, right? So you just, I always said, awareness precedes change and assessment precedes awareness. And I would say that there's a reason why, cliche as it is, time blocking and figuring out what you're actually doing. We do this with people all the time. Hey, like this next week, write down everything that you do. Like, what does your day look like in 30-minute increments, right? And people don't like doing it, but they usually don't like doing it because there's a subconscious, understanding that there's a lot of bullshit, wasted busy time. But once people do it, they're like, damn, I spend so much time on things that just don't do anything. Okay, you can get that time back. By the way, for some people, it's going to be like, how much TV and shows do you really watch? I love shows. I have my favorite shows, and like I'm a binge person on that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody's like, I don't have time for stuff, you do. It's just energy and allocation of it, right? Like if you're watching 4 hours of stuff a day, man, just watch 2 and get 2 back, and then use those 2 for fitness, for health, for family, for education, to improve your career. Fill in the blank of what is it that who you want to become and where you want to go. So I always say, like, I'm 10 times more productive than I used to be, and I still got a bunch of, room to improve on. I think everybody always has that.
I'll get back to my guest in a moment. I have cool news. I will be appearing at the King Kong booth at the Arnold Sports Festival in Columbus, Ohio, March 6th and 7th. And I'm fanatical about King Kong backpacks and duffels. They are the best quality bags. I'm long done with buying a new cheap gym bag every 6 months when the last one falls apart. My biggest problem is needing to pick between my Conquer backpack, my waxed canvas core backpack, my Plus duffel, sorry, it's downstairs, my Heritage leather. This thing is so classic. It looks gorgeous. and my Edge backpack. Sorry, you guys can't even get this one anymore. And I always have one of them with me wherever I go, the gym, work, all my travel. I rarely use traditional suitcases anymore, and the convenience is unmatched. And you can save 15% on all your orders. Go to www.knkg.com/Andrew59676. That's www.knkg.com/Andrew59676. Don't worry, just go to the show notes, the link's in there. And I hope to meet you in person at the King Kong booth at the Arnold Sports Festival. All right, hard pivot. You prompted me, you wanted to talk about this one, so I'll preface. Because I definitely feel like the message about the importance of building, maintaining muscle and bone as we age, it's out there. Now, it's also in this little microcosm that we live in. And the caveat is the battle is still to reach the overwhelming majority of people who are still sedentary, metabolically unhealthy. We know that. But we're not quite there yet with getting people to understand the importance of staying athletic as they get older. Talk to me about why this matters.
I mean, here's the thing. I'm really excited about that. There's kind of a trend of this, right? And I hope it sticks. I was saying athlete for life for the last 20 years. That's the way I've been training and training people. And now there's definitely been a uptick in that. And that's awesome, right? Because we realize, it's not strength that you lose first. It's not muscle that you lose first. It's power. Power and rotational power, speed, all those abilities. And those are very, very important for a number of reasons. I mean, if we just look at, I think part of longevity is like being able to do stuff as you age, right? Like to have control of your body, your life, yourself. And when you think about like what happens as you age, I've shared this statistic before, but I think it's one out of 5 people that fall after the age of like 60 or so, or maybe even 55, break their hip. It's a really long recovery. You put on a bunch of weight, mortality explodes. But what is catching yourself when you trip? I mean, that's power, that's agility, it's speed, and we lose that because we don't use it. Not, people will always say, oh, well, it's genetically. Well, if you actually look at the data, it's majority of the losses that we have is because one, we haven't built that ability up, and then we haven't maintained it, right? So if you, this is a crazy one. I'm probably getting the years maybe a little bit off, but I think it's like that. Only 1% of people after the age of 30 sprint. It's crazy.
Which sounds nuts, but then pause and think about it. When was the last time most of the people listening? Now, again, if we got coaches who are doing athletic shit, cool. You're microcosm, right? But you look around the average population. Like, really? How often? Like, I remember, I may have used this example on a previous episode, but I was at the Olympia, and there was this thing where you could see if you could dunk this. I think it was about a 9.5-foot basket with like a small ball. You could palm it, no problem. And I looked at this thing. I'm 47. I'll be 48 soon. I haven't jumped on a basketball net in a long time. I played high school ball, nothing beyond that. And I look at this and I go, this is probably a bad idea. I paused and I thought about it. And I was like, no, there's something itching at me. Like, I want to see if I can still do this. So like, I did a little warm-up jump, like, okay. And then, I palmed it, and sure enough, I actually dunked it, no problem. I felt good about it. But I'm thinking to myself, man, like, I could have just as easily, because I had not been doing this sort of stuff on a regular basis like you do. You play ball all the time. Man, like, the thought was in my mind that I could hurt myself doing that shit. And I wonder how many people it completely stops from doing it at all.
Well, I mean, when I talk to people, you kind of got two sides of the coin, right? The fear of doing anything because they don't do much. But the other side is, which I experience a lot because we have an in-house physical therapy clinic, high def. And, was where you're going and getting weekend warriors that are coming in with torn Achilles, torn ACLs, and that's exploded. It's folks that go like, hey, I go to the gym, I'm fit, I lift, but it's like the forces of, sprinting, stopping, jumping are like nothing touches that in the gym. Like your heavy deadlift will not touch those forces and or tissue adaptations to where it'll support you going all of a sudden, like you haven't done anything, but like, hey, I'm going to go play a tournament with 3 games this weekend. I haven't played in years, and I'm going to go stop, sprint, jump, cut. And hey, is it guaranteed you're going to injure yourself? No, but the chances skyrocket. Like, and we know, from all the data, even in pro sports, is right. Like, when do bad things happen? When the increase in volume and intensity, like, really kind of just jump overnight over the weeks, right? Like, there's a stat in the NBA where they compare the previous 28 days of training volume and intensity to the current 7-day, right? And you have these numbers, like 1.3 means that's 30% more than the previous 28 days. And once it goes like 1.3, 40% more, I think the injury rate increases to like 200 to 400%. So massive, right? Now, these are pro athletes. Now think about Joe, that's like, hey, I go to the gym, I bench, I do a leg press, I do this, I do that. I warm up on the bike, I do some stretches. I don't do anything, but then it's the summer and I'm going to go into this basketball league, right? I used to play ball, now I go in. And all of a sudden, for an hour and a half, you're doing all these athletic things that your body honestly has not done in a really long time. And this is where, things can go really, really wrong. And, if you play sports, there's always a chance of getting injured, obviously. But it's like, how do you put yourself in the best position possible? And look, the science of training, you have these residual training effects. I don't think people kind of know this, but basically it's how often do you need to train each physical quality to maintain it? Because each physical quality fades at a different rate, right? Even when you look at program design and you're like, okay, well, did you know that I'll actually kind of start from the back, like anaerobic endurance holds on for about 2 to 3 weeks. So think like more higher intensity conditioning, right? So to maintain it, you gotta do it at least once a week. I kind of recommend 1 to 2 times a week, right? This is high intensity intervals or repeated efforts that should appear weekly. Aerobic endurance, so this is kind of like your zone 2-ish, lower to medium intensity stuff. 10 to 20 days is the residual endurance, right? So 1 to 2 times per week, this is longer intensity conditioning. It can stick around, but it should still be, part of your programming. And this is what I like to do on the recovery days from your higher intensity strength speed days. Strength, endurance, and repeated power, residual is 1 to 2 weeks. So same thing, 1 to 2 times per week. Repeated jumping, sprinting, moderate load strength training. They need a little bit more exposure, for the work capacity. Now, max strength is awesome. Max strength stays around for 30 days, meaning like you could legitimately lift really heavy once every 30 days once you're pretty strong, and you can maintain it. How cool is that, right? And honestly, like this is, I think, important for programming because, even people like myself that like lifting heavy, but once you've built up a pretty good base of strength and muscle, what's awesome is like once you've done it for a long time, maintenance actually takes a lot less, right? And so basically you legitimately could, once you get strong, train once a month heavy and maintain that. Now, I'm not suggesting that you only do it once a month, but I'll tell you what, for most people over the age of 35, they probably do it too often, okay? And that can kind of beat them up. But here's the kicker. Max speed and just speed in general, 3 to 7 days. That's it. That's the residual. So, for athletes, I'm like, hey, you should probably be doing sprints at least 2 times a week, if not 3 times a week. Because speed basically fades fast, and true high effort sprint work, even if it's like short acceleration, should be exposed multiple times per week. And, for athletes, even in season, but for the weekend warrior, it's like in season might be all year if you're hooping, if you're playing flag football, whatever you're doing. So why do I say this, right? I say this because you think about like, speed, even like I've had a bit of a back thing for the last 2-3 months, which is I'm about 90%. And I took, I was sprinting twice a week for a year plus straight, jumping, plyos, the whole shebang. And I kind of pulled back on it for the last 2 months. And I'm adding it back in, but again, being smart, not too much too fast, building it up. And that's how you're supposed to do it. Now, the kicker is, for anybody, I don't care what age you are, like we coach people from, our eldest client is like an 83, from pro athletes to high school to you name it. And that 83-year-old, she slams the shit out of the ball at her best ability. She does foot fire. She actually can do a box jump. She'll move the prowler pretty damn fast, and she's been training with us for years. But she's doing this stuff, and crazy story, okay? Her name's Ann Moskovitz. And years ago, somebody hit her on a bike, and she got really messed up and broken bones and everything. And in the hospital, they're like, we don't know what you do, but you survived because you train, right? It's like, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And then she had another, disease where her hip broke, and I'm going to blank on what it is. But guess what? Like I text her in the hospital, we sent her flowers, and she texted me back. She's like, can't wait to be back at the gym. Right. She's an incredible inspiration. And like, her doctor now is like legitimately like, man, like we got to get more elderly people going to vigor training. This is incredible. Right. Like, but what's happening is that she has control of her life. She can do stuff. She can react. She can do, and obviously like not at the levels of super fit, fast XYZ, 35, 40-year-old. But man, she is in the 1 percentile of her age group. And a lot of times people will say stuff like, oh, well, but that's her. No, like she's had a lot of misfortune and she has worked hard to have this ability. And so where it's easy for me to talk about, the athlete for life and people that want to be super athletic and, the pro sports athletes that I train and all that stuff. But man, this is for everybody, right? Like we lose these abilities as we age because if you don't use them, you lose them. And that's why I wanted to say, what are the residual training effects so that people understand how quickly you lose some of these abilities, right? And that if you're like, hey, I sprint here and there and then I don't, and then, I come back and 6 months later, I just ramp it up real quick. And it's like, yeah, that's not a good idea. You want to do things year round, but you just turn the dial, of how much you do it. It's like, I always love the piece of the pie analogy of program design, right? Like maybe there's periods where you're like, hey, I'm more in a muscle building phase, right? Like I'm going to do more of this. And the piece of the pie for strength and resistance training goes up, but you're still doing your plyos. You're still doing some speed work, right? And that's the whole, I would say the science and art of program design is like, how do you fit it all together? But I think everybody should do it.
I recently had Chad Landers on and we talked about, changing your training over 50 if it was necessary. And he did pilot something that aligns with what you just said. As you get older, it's less forgiving. So consistency matters more. The breaks in your consistency and your lifestyle stuff have more significant consequences. And you pretty much explained it with the risks of going inactive and then ramping it back up again.
Well, because here's the thing, right? We all tend to have, like, look, even in my mind, it's very easy to go like, man, like I play sport at the highest level and, I was able to do these things and I train hard and, so, hey, I'm just going to throw myself back in here in a basketball league. But if I didn't do it for, 9 months, that's not a good idea. Like and by the way, we had a client that kind of pretty fit, but didn't do any of the basketball stuff, went back to league, tore his Achilles. It's been a year and a half. So he's very, very rehabbed in. And, I said, look, here's how you want to do it. You want to go to the basketball court and start doing drills for a couple weeks, then play 3-on-3 half court, right? Because what are we doing? Like you're progressively kind of increasing the intensities because half court, you just can't get as much speed, as much deceleration. Also, it's more controlled at first. Do your own drills. Then it's like 3-on-3. Okay, then, then go to 5-on-5 and obviously keep shorter games. Like don't play for too long a periods of time. Right. It's just like anything else. Like you just have a plan of progressing. Don't go straight back to all out intensity, and of course, look, sports are, if you're competitive and you used to play, you get into a game, you get competitive, right? And then you get after it. But it's like, I don't care what you used to do. The body doesn't really care, right? Like the tissue is built the way that the tissue is built, right? And so you have to rebuild it if you haven't done it for a long time because you've lost, those abilities. Now, of course, look, there's a difference between somebody that's never done anything versus a former athlete. But each person has to have an individualized kind of like progression. And you'll be blown away by what people can achieve if you have this nice slow cook, right, of athletic performance. Meaning like, hey, if we do this over the course of like a year, you'll go way further than you ever thought possible in athleticism. And like we have folks in 50s and 60s that are like, hey, like I'm the most athletic I've been in my life. And I'm like 65. I have real examples, right? But it's like, we just slow cooked it over years, but it's like, if I was like, hey, we're going to just go hard in the paint on all this stuff, they wouldn't do well with it, right? They probably have a lot of nagging joint stuff and inflammation. Like they just can't recover from it. So you just have to progress it. And I think that that's the, big mistake in fitness. I think in general is like, too much too fast. And I've made that mistake, by the way. I've made that mistake with my own training when I was younger. I made that mistake with clients, right? Because you get all the stuff, you get super excited, and then you're just like, you throw everything in there. Because let me give a caveat that's very, very important, okay? Especially as the rise of like, people like, hey, athleticism is cool again, no matter what age, be athletic, which I agree with. But for somebody that likes lifting, okay, and now all of a sudden you see social media, you can see this reel and that reel, and you see High Rocks and Apex and this, that, and the other. And all of a sudden you're like, cool, here's my training, and I'm going to add all these other things. Okay. Remember, if you add something, you got to take something away, right? You can't just keep adding, because that is a recipe for disaster. So, if your training volume, and you did 8 exercises because you were really in this muscle building phase, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, they said I should do plyos and sprints. So now you do plyos and sprints, and you continue to have all those 8 exercises, really high intensities. Very quickly, you're going to run into a wall, and either your performance will drop, or you're going to have nagging aches, pains, and hopefully, not also an injury. So you got to, I want to just give real examples, right? It might look like now you had plyos and this, that, the other, and you only have 5 exercises that you do after that, right? And you may not lose anything, you may gain, so again, this can be a deeper conversation, but I would just encourage people, because I see folks that, don't train at Vigor, and they're like, hey man, like I saw this. So I just started doing, I went out and started doing 40-yard dashes at the track. I'm like, whoa, are you good? It's like, well, my hammies feel like they're going to rip off the ball. And I'm like, yeah, that's starting too fast, right? Do Derek Hansen 10x10s. Like, let's make a program. Let's create, take some of the stuff out. Like, you're going and doing a heavy deadlift one day, and then like really hard sprints the next day. Not a good combo, right? Like, so there's just the organization of your training. There's a reason why there's a science to it. There's a reason why we program things the way that we do. And I think that because it's such a positive that people are getting into, athletic training and being more athletic, I love it, right? But with that, we also have to go, okay, but be cautionary about this, and let's be smart about it, right? Let's educate people about how this should be done in a smart way, because otherwise you get this. Somebody goes and does it, they pull a hammy, and they go like, I'm done. I'm not doing that again because it's not for me. See, and the thing is, that's not true. They just did too much too fast, and now they think that athletic training is dangerous, right? So by the way, some people don't ever have to progress to doing a 40-yard sprint, right? Maybe even a sprint, but that's still, they can still do a lot of athletic things and jump, throw, sprint with a sled, and that slows them down. Do box jumps, do this, do that. There's this whole continuum of progressions and regressions and the abilities that somebody wants to build. Somebody might say, hey, I do want to get back to playing flag football and being fast in a 40. Somebody else, like, I don't care about that stuff, right? But hey, maybe I want to get away from somebody, that's chasing me and have a quick 10 yards, right? Like, all those are, the goals are going to be different, but everybody should do some type of athletic training in a smart way.
There's certain constraints I like when it comes to incorporating explosive stuff. A way I like to do is, we obviously do explosive stuff early in workouts, and I like having them serve also as an effective warm-up. So things like you mentioned sled sprinting, you have the constraint of the sled preventing you from reaching max speed. I love power skips because you're going single leg, your ability to get very high, jump that hard, and then the force you're absorbing on landing is limited, again, built into constraint. Throwing medicine balls. I love rotationally throwing medicine balls against walls because, again, there's just only so much velocity, torque you can create by throwing a medicine ball. Can you get a little bit more specific on some of the tactics? Because again, people are going to hear this stuff and go, oh, I got to do all this shit. So
no, I'll actually give like real world programming examples of, like, for a beginner, what we do. So imagine like a dynamic warm up. Like, we always finish dynamic warm-ups. So think like dynamic warm-ups, you're going to go from, single joint to multi-joint. You're going to go from sitting to standing, right? You're going to go from simple to complex. So think like I'm on the floor doing hamstring switches, like to get a little hammy stretch. And then from there, I might do a tie sit. I'm still on the floor, right? I might do a glute bridge. From there, I might go to Spider-Man lunge with rotation, a squat to stand. Right now I'm standing. And from there, I might go and do some high knees. By the way, I don't have to dial it up to 100%. I can do it at 50 in warm-ups, right? I'm going to do some skips. And usually the way we finish, like even with people that don't have a lot of what I call, the movement alphabet. They don't have, they haven't done stuff like this in the past. Like we start them slow. We might just have them marching on the spot, right? Because even it's coordination of running, right? We're marching. Okay, cool. Now let's turn this march into a little bit of a high knees, or we might do, leaning wall marches. And then just like, hey, skip like a kid, right? And you start skipping. And maybe we'll have a B skip. But that's part of warm-ups, but we're also adding like some extensive, not high intensity plyometrics. Awesome. This is, by the way, still part of the warm-up, right? From there, usually for what I would call like our beginner template is we're going to do a lower body and an upper body, like power / plyo combo. So that could be a box jump, or if I'm not comfortable with somebody doing a box jump, I might have them grab a Dynaball and just go like, hey, throw it as high up as you can, right? That becomes an explosive triple extension, and almost anybody can do that, right? And then the second one's going to be like, hey, do a med ball wall throw. So that's the upper body power. And they're just going to do, a box jump, med ball wall throw, 5 reps each, a little break, do it again, do that for 3 supersets. And then we're going to go into the strength training, right? So what we did in that session is, at the end of the warm-up, we did a bunch of more like not higher intensity plyometrics, but extensive. It's going to get their tissues warmed up, the nervous system going. Then we're actually going to go make them do something with intent, right? Throw his ball as high as you can, like jump on his box, try to land with just minimal knee bend, right? And med ball, like, hey, try to destroy this med ball against the wall, right? That works for everybody. People like doing that shit, right? But that's it. That might be the extent of it. Boom. And now we go to our trap bar deadlift and dumbbell bench press and lunges and whatever else, right? So now in my athlete for life model, we might do, the intensity might go up a little bit, but I tend to, the first strength exercise, and let's call it trap bar deadlift because it's just a safe, a lift that's safe for most people where we can go pretty heavy on it. We're going to contrast that and kind of do a bit of a French contrast with just one exercise and superset it with something. So trap bar deadlift, broad jump, right? Trap bar deadlift, for example, box jump or hurdle hops. And why? Well, because for clients that only have so much time, it's an effective way to get in some more of that explosive plyometric training. And we kind of know research, you can put it on the front of the big exercise, on the back end, you have like, post-activation potentiation. And I know some people will argue whether how much it works or not, but honestly, I use it more because it's more time efficient, right? If somebody's got an hour to train or so, like, man, it makes a lot more sense to do big lift, explosive exercise, right? And then they have the break. So it cuts down on the training session, but they still get all those abilities that they're working on. And then after that, they'll go into their regular strength training stuff, right? So it's not like a crazy alteration of their program. Now, yeah, absolutely, we could get more granular. And when I customize things, some people want to, hey, I'm pretty damn strong. I just want to maintain that, but I really want to work on more athleticism. And we add more of that in there. And you're always doing it when you're fresh. Just general rules. If you want to improve a skill, and remember, running, jumping, agility drills, these are all skills, right? You want to do them when you're fresh, right? So fatigue is the enemy of skill acquisition, right? That's why when you get really tired, doing something really well is not in the books, right? So, and this is, by the way, how do you get faster? How do you jump higher? You want to be fresh, right? So meaning, like, you don't do, and you've seen this in a lot of program where plyometrics and power stuff becomes conditioning, right? It's like really short breaks, circuits. Okay, now you're doing power endurance, right? Like, it's not true power, speed, agility, decel training. So you want it to be fresh, right? So that's why you do it at the beginning, and now you're working on that ability versus you do it at the end. Now, look, there's nothing wrong with doing like lateral shuffles and star agility drills at the end for conditioning, right? But you want to train the ability that you want to improve at the beginning when you're freshest, right? So that's just an important part, because I've seen a lot of kind of crazy programming that doesn't make sense, especially for somebody that's starting to work on this just now.
And I'm going to delineate one specific thing. If we're dealing with athlete populations, specifically athletes, and I think Joel Jamieson and his course does a great job with this, there is a dimension of certain skills, MMA fighting, basketball, where fatigue is going to be present, right? So you want the energy system development, but part of it is also practicing the skill under fatigue. That's a different conversation. That's not necessarily strength training. We're not trying to go, let's make sure you're really good at Olympic lifts at the end of a workout when you're fatigued. I don't think there's any value in training that. But for the sports skill, yes, there's an element of we want to maintain those skills under fatigue. Try to not have them degrade.
It's a great point, because me and Joel did like a reel that actually got a lot of kind of it got a lot of views, but it was about that, right? It was about I was on an echo bike, just like going all out, but like my form, my head was whipping around. I was looking like I was losing my mind and having a heart attack or something, right? But our whole point was like, once intensity of conditioning goes up, which a lot of programs and group programs, like this is what happens, does the form go to shit? And as coaches, like, remember, you do not want people to break form under fatigue, because guess what? They're going to get really good at breaking form under fatigue. And that's going to be, whether you play a sport, but even if you're just a fitness enthusiast, the chance of injury goes up, obviously, right? You're not training the tissues that you want. You're not training the form and efficiency that you want, and things go bad. And so, you don't want intensity to override quality standards of form, right? And by the way, that's in general, right? That means in strength training, like, could you squeeze out another 2 reps, but all of a sudden it just looks like an absolute shit show, and something can go wrong? No, like, you build it up, like, go to maybe a technical failure or 1 RR, but like with good form, right? Now, look, there's ranges to that. Like, I'm not saying that like it has to be picture perfect, but we do know when you've seen somebody under a squat bar and it's just like, you cringe because you're like, holy crap, something's going to go wrong. They're getting the bar up, but they're rounded, their head's forward, they're a second away from like something exploding, right? Like, I would terminate that set, because we don't have to, this goes back to like the longer runway. Sometimes clients get treated like, you need to do that today. Like, no, like you have time. Let's build this up the right way. And that goes for strength, for power, for conditioning, is to have a standard of form. Again, let me repeat this. That doesn't mean it's like picture perfect. And if it's not, there's a range of a good rep, right?
Thank you.
Because I think that's, some people get so granular about that. There's just like, if you deviate a little bit, all of a sudden, oh my God, like your tendon's going to pop. And it's like, no, but there is a range where, for me, once it goes past that kind of, that standard, I'm like, all right, we're going to terminate the set, and why? Because the rule number 1 for a client is like, man, thou shalt do no harm. So if that starts increasing the risk of injury a lot, like I'm going to end that.
Perfect point. I was going to say it myself. Like, I'm only going to throw in a little tiny bit of shade. Sometimes I like screwing with Squat U, likes to post a lot of this stuff. Anybody listening knows I don't call people out very much, but it likes to post this stuff about maintaining perfect form, and then that's it. It's like, as you said, no, there is a range. Could either of us define it perfectly? Probably not. We know it when we see it. And as you said, once the form changed enough that different tissues are taking load, it's like Jordan Shallow says, force exceeds tissue tolerance. But if you're actually changing the form to where the tissue that's being loaded changes, well, that's exactly how you introduce injury risk in these situations.
Absolutely. And like, a great example is, I think Jordan talked about this, but like I see so much of this with the NFL guys, right? Where if I'm like, okay, show me your trap bar deadlift form, right? And somebody grabs the trap bar deadlift, right? And I'll take a picture of them. And then we're like, all right, well, imagine that you have a barbell on your back. Show me a squat form, right? And they do the squat and I take a picture, and I put them next to each other. I'm like, they look exactly the same. Your squat is your hinge, your hinge is your hinge, right? So you're basically, every time you do a squat and every time you do a hinge, you're actually training the same muscles, but your quads are weak as can be, even though like you're a big dude and you're strong and like, right? Like, and then we put them into a very upright. I put them on wedges, O lineman, 330 pounds, crazy strong, can squat a lot, but then I'll give them 2 kettlebells and have them drive the knees forward and stay really upright. And they're getting cooked with 262s. You know what I mean? Like, cooked. Why? Because those different tissues are being loaded, right? Like, this is hingy, this is squatty. But I wanted to give an example of what can happen, because a lot of times those guys get knee injuries because they don't like all the tissue strength and tolerance is in the hips, and sometimes maybe even too much, right? It exceeds the tolerance, but then the knee doesn't have the capacity, or should I say the quads don't have the capacity for decel and stuff like that, because the patterns you're training are actually always all, similar and the same in a tissue. So I know I'm getting geeky here, but this stuff matters, like these things really, really matter. And like, I get guys that like, on one, this kind of same thing, I'm going to use geeky terms, but I promise I'll explain it, load versus propulsion, right? Like on one leg, when they do a lunge, they sit into the hip, right? They're loading. On the other side, they lunge and they actually drive the knee forward. So it's like more propulsion based. So you're kind of seeing like, and again, these people don't realize this, but I'll take a picture of it and they're like, damn, holy shit. So then I start giving them some cues, right? Like, hey, on this side, I'm going to now have you load. So your knee can't really go too far past where my hand is. So not a lot of shin angle. And they're like, holy smokes, right? All of a sudden they feel their glute, but they're like, I'm so much weaker this way. Then on the other side, I'm like, all right, cool. Now on this one, I want you to now step and get a lot of shin angle, and they're like, holy crap, my quad is getting cooked. This is hard. And I'm like, we got to bring that asymmetry a little bit further back, because it'll just give you, it'll give you more room to make mistakes. Let's just call it that. Right. And, we get guys to do that. And guess what? They have a better base to not get injuries. Again, pro sports, you never know what's going to happen. But my job is to make the people as anti-fragile as I can for the activity that they want to do, whether that's the NFL or the NBA, or if it's pickleball, or if it's like picking up grandkids, right? And all these things matter. And like, sometimes and you know me, obviously, Andrew, as far as like, when people simplify, like, I think simplicity matters, right? But I think the craft of coaching, if you're an exceptional coach, you can see things, you can program things, you can do things that just are so much superior to just like, just do this, right? I think sometimes coaching really just gets bucketed into, one of my newer coaches, and again, no shade to them, right? Because it was very much so, oh yeah, like, all you got to do is this. I'm like, and I said to them, I said, hey, let me ask you this. A guy that got the NBA MVP, do they play basketball? She said, yeah. Okay. The guy at the YMCA this weekend, do they play basketball? Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm like, yeah, they both play basketball, right? The NBA MVP, how much do they make? How good are they? It's like, well, damn, like, $100 million a year or whatever, right? The guy at the YMCA, what do they make? How good are they? It's like, okay. I said, well, listen, coaching is like that. It's a skill, right? You can come in and be a trainer and blast the music and take a program and just like, fucking, let's go, or you can be like elite. Programming is elite. Communication is elite. Problem solving is elite. Technical proficiency is elite. It's a science and an art. It's like jazz, right? Like jazz is, you can read the notes on the thing and it's like, oh, cool. But when somebody plays it, it's like, man, this is incredible, right? And when you do coaching right, when you program design right, when you do all these things, the spokes to the wheel that move your body forward, which is training, nutrition, mindset, recovery, that's when you play jazz, when you're great at this shit, right? And I get fired up about this stuff because I think that what ends up happening is that people go like, oh, like coaching is the guy at the YMCA that comes in and plays and it's like, no. Like I like to talk about coaching about the elite level. And, how we insert those things into people's lives so they can, get the holy trinity, which to me is body composition, health, and performance, right? That's my mentality. And like, you come to Vigor, we're improving all three. That's it. That's the holy trinity. You improve performance, but your health sucks and your body comp doesn't change. Most people don't want that, right? Like they want all three. Like I want to feel better. I want to be healthier. I want to perform better, and I want to look better.
A quick break from this episode to shout out RP Strength and the RP Hypertrophy app. I have a big confession. I've never used a coach before. I've always auto-regulated my training for decades. But I've known Dr. Mike Isertel and Nick Shaw, the founders of RP, for years, and I'll get behind anything they create, including years of reading their books, consuming their media, attending their seminars, and having them as guests on the show. And I've been using the RP Hypertrophy app now for several months. and several things have happened. It forced me to make smaller and more gradual but better increases in weight volume across time, like putting 5-pound plates on each side of a leg press. Like, who does that? Never before. Only 45s. It cut out the junk volume. It made my workouts faster and more efficient. I show up with a plan. I didn't have to think about what to do. I feel more accountable having a lot of my progress. And I don't skip things because I don't feel like it. If hiring a one-on-one coach isn't for you, using the RP Hypertrophy app is the next best thing to manage your gains and to take the guesswork out of your program. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it risk-free, and if you don't like it, they'll give you your money back. And I've also got you a $50 US dollar discount, so go to rpstrength.com/coats and use the code COATSRP, or go to the link below in the show notes. That's rpstrength.com/coats and use the code COATSRP. All right. There's another dimension to all this. And so I'll read this, but I'm going to frame it. So, quote, you posted recently, mentorship in 2 sentences. I have high expectations for you and I know you can meet them. So try this new challenge. And if you fail, I'll help you recover. Now, this ain't about mentorship. I'm going a different direction. To me, this is about coaching and trust and support for the client to be successful. And a lot of people listening are not necessarily coaches. A lot of coaches, but so we'll try to address this from everybody's angle as well. And the key again for me is expressing your belief in someone. How important is knowing that someone believes in you? And I'm going to say one last thing. How many coaches catch yourselves? You doubt the client. Someone comes in front of you and you think this person doesn't want it bad enough, doesn't have what it takes, is struggling with something. And you may not be saying it, but with either your body language or the absence of you saying to someone, hey, I really believe in you, you're communicating that you don't. Talk to me about this.
I'll start off by saying, like, I think that whoever's listening to this, like, you're a coach. There's an interaction in your life where you're coaching every day. You're coaching your coworker to help them, knock out something they didn't know how to do, a task or whatever it may be. You're coaching your son, you're coaching your daughter. Like, coaching, think about this. So, I think it's a Martin Rooney definition, at least from that I heard it from him, right? Like, if you look up coach in the definition it was, you'd ride coach, or you ride coach in an aircraft, right? Like, but the coach would take you from point A to point B because you couldn't get there yourself, right? And I think the best analogy for coaching that I prefer even more so is that, like, we're Sherpas, right? That everybody has their own Everest that they're climbing, and by the way, that could be in fitness. It could be in, relationships. It could be in your career. There's an Everest that you want to achieve. Now, a Sherpa, couple of things. The Sherpa has been there themselves. And also the Sherpa has taken others there, right? Very few people have climbed Everest themselves. You have to go with somebody, right? Like, now the Sherpa knows the way because they've been there. They've been there with others. They know the obstacles, they know the challenges, they know the pitfalls, they know the opportunities, they know the shortcuts, they know all these different things, right? And so you can't tell me that you are not a Sherpa in someone's life. And again, this could be your kids, your spouse, your friends, you're at work, in your career. Now, it may not be fitness. It doesn't matter. You can insert whatever you want here. So I think that's an important part. Now, that quote that I posted as far as mentorship goes, that, like, I have high expectations of you. There's no person that's ever entered in Vigor that I'm like, oh, I don't think that you can achieve more than you're achieving in life right now. Or in your, like, to be honest with you, I think 99.999% of the time, I believe in the person much, 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 much more, whether it's my coach or clients, than they do in themselves. Guaranteed, right? I've never been like, somebody's telling me what they can do, and I go like, I don't think you can do that. I've never said that. Now, I have sometimes said when they tell me like a crazy big goal, and I'm like, you can do it. Here's what it's going to require, right? And like, let me show you what it will require to do that. And if you're willing to do that, because I believe you can do that, but the question is, do you have what I call the GWC? Do you get it? Do you want it? Do you have the capacity for it? Right? Very, very important part. But like, to me, I'm like, let's set, like, most people set low goals and reach them, right? Let's set high goals. And by the way, when you fail, which you will, because the path to getting there is riddled with failure that end up being stepping stones to you getting there, right? But I think that's the key, is to go like, when you fail, I'll be here. I got you, right? I'll help you get back up, and I'll help you get back on track and go. And you said something, and I think fitness is riddled with this, okay? But the bigger the challenge, the more support a person needs, right? And you have like how many diets, crazy programs, things that people can buy where the challenge is big, but the support is zero, right? Or very, very low. So the support has to match the size of the challenge. For most people, improving their sleep, their nutrition, getting consistent with training, that is a big challenge, right? So doing it without support is kind of crazy. And then a lot of people try to convince you, just like, and by the way, what support can come in a lot of roles. I think the ultimate support obviously is a coach, but I also think it's the environment, the community, right? Like when you come to Vigor Ground, it's not just myself and the coaches that are helping you and supporting you. It's the other members, right? It's a tribe. They're all on the same journey as you. And so you have also shared struggle, right? And one of my favorite quotes is like, struggle shared is struggle divided, or pain shared is pain divided, and happiness shared is happiness multiplied. So you get this community where you divide pain and struggle, and you get like multiplication of happiness, right? Meaning, or wins, let's just call them wins. And so I think that you don't want to, it's like you shape your environment and your environment shapes you. I think choosing your environments to support these big challenges is critical. It's also why mentorships and masterminds and coaching programs are so powerful, right? It's why micro gyms that have, I would say, culture of transformation and results are so powerful. Because it's like, culture basically says, this is how we do things here. And a lot of these gyms that have really good coaches and programs, right, the way that they do things there is that they're very, very supportive of people, because anybody that's trying to transform their life through fitness, you're going to fail. Like there's no way, like every day you just keep winning. You never, we know this. I mean, for me, it's been like, challenging, and I'm very, very dedicated to, maintaining my health and performance, even though with having a kid. But like I've had to, man, I want to do 3 conditioning days a week, but I've only been able to get 1 a weekend, right? And I'm trying to figure it out. I got to get up at 4:35 to, get these other days in. It's challenging. So I need support. And obviously I have support because thankfully both me and Waitia are committed to, health and fitness, and it's still challenging, right? And we have the gym and the community, and we have coaches, right? Like, and so my point to that is like, if we treat, that quote to me is like, if we treat people in our lives, whether it's friends, family, people that we coach, in that quote, hey, like, I believe I'm going to set high standards for you, high expectations, because I believe you can meet them. But when you fail, and there's a likelihood that you'll fail a bunch of times, and that's okay, because I'm going to still be here and I'm going to help you still get there.
I think within this, especially from the coaching lens, it's too easy to look at someone and not have faith in them. And I think, but if you look at every single person, you can realize you absolutely have this within you. You are capable of it. And I think coaches or everybody, we have to remind ourselves first, and then we actually have to show that person, because hearing it from someone else can change their experience. And I think it's absolutely critical to a successful coaching relationship.
Listen, I shared this with the team. We had a team, like big team meeting this weekend. I think I first heard this from Tony Robbins. I could be wrong. I read too much, so then I forget where I hear it from. But this is, I think, really, really important. And he talks about that there's 3 things that like influence your life, right? Number 1, your focus. So where does your focus go? And like when I was talking to my team this week, and I said, look, right now I got to start asking you, Andrew, about, the challenges that you've had with health this year, for example, right? And if I kept asking you more and more, like deeper about it, you'd start focusing on it. And maybe that would make you feel like upset or, not in the best mood, or, it would basically create an experience for you. You're focusing on this thing that's not creating a good feeling and emotion experience. But then at the same moment, I could go like, hey, tell me about this program that you're really excited about. Tell me about this project. And we'd go in and like all of a sudden your energy changes, right? But the thing is, all that's changed is where you put your focus. So your focus is dictating how you feel and your whole experience in life, right? So guess what? Probably a very, very good idea if you practice focus. And by the way, it is a skill. It's a skill you can practice. Okay. So that's number one. Number two is the meaning that we give that thing that we focus on, right? So right now, I could, for example, start talking to you about, hey, Andrew, like I noticed this thing that you're doing and man, I don't think it's good for you. I think this is not good for your health, or I think it's going to do this, that, and the other. Now you could go like, man, what a dick Luka is. Like this guy's just, telling me what trying to tell me what I should be doing. Like, man, I don't know what I'm doing, right? So the meaning that you give it is like that I'm being a smart ass, that I'm trying to tell you that I'm smarter than you, right? Like, or you could go like, man, Luka saw something and like he wants me to be better, feel better, perform better. And so he's coaching me, right? He's trying to keep me accountable to something, right? So here's the thing. What meaning you give it, you could be pissed off at me and be like, I'm not talking to that guy anymore. Like, whatever, man, right? Or it could be like, man, I appreciate you, man. Like, I didn't even think about, right? Like, you just gave the same thing that happened a different meaning. And it completely altered number three, right? It altered what you're going to do in number three, which is action and behavior, right? Because it's like, you're going to have a focus, and that's going to really create a trajectory for like what's going to happen. But then what do you give meaning to this thing that you focus on? Because that's going to determine the action that you take. And literally every single day, your whole life is that, right? Like, and why do I say that? Because we're talking about challenge and support and coaching and, even like I said, the X's and O's of how to be more athletic for life. And it comes down through this like filter and lens of where your focus goes, what meaning you give it to, because that's going to dictate the next action that you take, right? And it sounds very like foo-foo-ish, but it's the truth because, again, going back to, it was a conversation with one of my coaches about, when they came in, where was their focus? Because I was like, hey, I walked up during some coaching. I said, pulled him aside. I was like, hey, you good? You okay? It's like, oh, do you notice something? I was like, yeah, just like your energy's not here. It seems like you're worried about something. Like, man, I am. I said, how about this? After you coach, we can talk about it and sit down about it. But right now, focus on your people. Like, you are this very moment. This is the best part of their day. You got to make it the best part of their day, and you're changing their life, right? Boom. And for that time, the energy switched. You could see it. Body language, hands were starting to move. They changed their focus. And the meaning was like, remember what we do, because I tell this story. I'm like, remember what we do. We don't do exercise. We change lives, we save lives, we save families. Like, that's what we do, right? And all of a sudden, boom, it's different. So the focus changed, the meaning changed, the action changed. Then afterwards, we talked about a hard thing that's happening in their life. And the thing is that like so much of what we do, because our emotions, unfortunately, a lot of times what happens, like you have a thought, you have a focus, creates an emotion. That emotion leads to behavior. It's usually not the behavior we want, right? Like, oh, I'm tired, man. Like, man, my boss at work, oh, man, they don't value me. Glass of wine, full chocolate bar, right? Mm-hmm. But, we could flip that around and go like, hey, well, what identity do I want to create? Okay, cool. Well, what does that person focus on? Okay, what meaning do they give it? All right, what action do they take, right? You kind of flip it around. And so I think so much of improving your life, obviously, there's I think you can't untether them. Like, there's physical and there's mental, but I think a lot of people don't hit the mental weight room, right? You got to hit the physical weight room. You got to hit the mental weight room, right? I will say that like hitting the physical weight room actually does tick the box of the mental weight room sometimes as well. But the thing is like, there is a practice of how you look at the world. You know what I mean? Like, it's like people that are like constantly seeing like a flawed thing. And I'm like, hey, just wipe off the window. It's like to see clearly. And that's, I think, why we need, I think that's why coaches are so powerful. I think that's why communities are so powerful, because if you're around people like that long enough, you will rub off on them, right? It's like we adhere to the standards of the tribe. Everybody in the tribe reads. All of a sudden, you're like, well, shit, I'll start reading 10 pages a day, right? Everybody in the tribe exercises. It's like, well, this is the norm. Like, I don't want to be pushed out of the tribe. Now, if everybody in the tribes goes out drinking 5 days a week, then that's the norm, right? If everybody in the tribe is smoking, if everybody in the tribe is talking shit about each other, right? Like, you get pulled into that because you don't want to be expelled from the tribe, because that's like socially extremely, I would say, painful for human beings. So, I love to study this stuff because I don't think there's, when it comes to I would say behavior change, it's all biopsychosocial, right? You can't untether it. You just can't. And if you read a lot of the research and studies, it will show you just that, right? That like on a different day, based on who's around you, how you feel, how you think, your biology might be different, right? You might perform differently, right? And so I think that coaches, and really, essentially a great coach is a great lifestyle manager in many ways, right? Like, and you have to have a lot of tools in the toolbox to be great. And it takes me back to the whole, that analogy of like the person playing YMCA ball or the person playing in the NBA finals that's going to be MVP. Same skill set, different levels of the skill. And I think that to achieve, what we want to achieve in life, you got to build these different skill sets. And I like, one of the things I love talking to people about is like, hey, you're just a 2 out of 10 in this skill, but you can build it. Right now you're a 2 out of 10 of eating protein with every meal. Let's get you to a 7 or 8. It's going to alter a lot of stuff. Like right now you're 4 out of 10 on consistent exercise. Like, let's build this skill up, right? And you're just helping people build these skills, because once they have the skills, even if life is hard, even if, challenges arise, they'll have the competence and confidence to still do these things, right? So we're just constantly helping, that big challenge with a lot of support, being lifestyle managers, to build their skills so they're sustainable, so that even without us, people can achieve, all the things that they want to achieve.
Luka Hocevar, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody can follow you at Luka Hocevar on Instagram. Where else do you want to point people? Obviously, Vigor Life podcast. That's always great.
And YouTube, probably. YouTube is, if you just look up Luka Hocevar on YouTube, there's a lot of videos there you can go over.
And you don't have dates nailed down 100% yet, but we might as well shout this out. Everything should be a go for the Vigor Ground Fitness and Business Conference. It'll be later this year. I will be boots on the ground attending it. I appreciate you having me speaking, basically 2 years ago. That was a great honor. And it's been an event that's changed my life. So I hope everybody here will put it on their calendars.
Hell yeah. And by the time this comes out, maybe I already know. It will be a November date. Not like Thanksgiving, but like probably first, second week of November. And excited about it. I mean, like every time that, we decide to do it, it's because it really, I never hold back on this event, as you know, right? Like I only do it every 2 years because it's such a big amount of work and money and time and energy. But when we do it right. When we do it the absolute best that we can, and there'll be no difference in that this year. We'll have a little bit longer time to push and prepare for it. So I'm excited about it.
I will not be doing my event. I haven't done it the last couple of years. But I will explore the idea of looking at it in 2027, because we tend to do similar themed events and same type of year, and I do not want them to overlap. We did that 1 year, and we did it a couple of times. They're both great, but full force behind yours, and I can't wait. So thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it.
Masterclass in spades today. Appreciate you.
My pleasure, brother. Thank you.